Welcome to Insightful Player TV. I see Jerome. We're having technical difficulties tonight, so we're going to be messaging. I'm going to be messaging my questions to him. But I want to welcome you for tuning in. We're going to have a great program. And for those of you that have never heard about Insightful Player is in a bold movement of hope where we've married together NFL great role models and have a really wonderful message to share and really want to reach kids with kids that are in need, because kids today don't have enough support, they don't have enough leadership. Parents have way too many demands on them today, and we all need to chip in and help. So Insightful Player is here to get these players on a platform where their messages can be heard by more kids, so we can inspire kids to go after their dreams, because this world is in a spiritual crisis, and I believe it's the children that are going to really save humanity. And I also think that we all have the ability to really step it up and really reach out to kids and really support them. Perhaps you have a neighbor that parents aren't home very much. Maybe you want to visit them. Or maybe you see a kid out in the schoolyard that's all by themselves. Or a child that sits alone in the cafeteria. Heavens to Betsy, I'm having trouble with my earbuds tonight. So, thank you for tuning in. We're really excited to have you here. And I have to tell you about our guest. His name is Geromme Sapp. He is a former player for the Ravens, the Colts, and then the Ravens again. He's an amazing role model. He grew up in the inner city in Houston, which wasn't easy, and he's going to have a lot of stories to tell you. And he didn't have a dad that was around, but he was very blessed because he had this amazing mother who was just incredible, the way she really cared for her two boys and really taught them a lot of valuable life skills. She was so dedicated, and they both ended up building tremendous character. Now, Geromme was very accomplished. In high school, he was a great student, and he was one of the top 10 NFL football players in the whole state of Texas. And we all know how big Texas is. And then from there, he went to Notre Dame. My goodness, and as well, he soared academically as well as athletically. And from there, he went into the NFL and played for 5 years. And since he's been out of the NFL, he started 2 businesses. So he's going to tell you all about that too. He's a tremendous role model, and I think he's one of the wisest people I've ever met. And I believe he was wise back in get-go when he was a kid in Houston. So you have a lot to look forward to with learning from Geromme Sapp. So welcome, Geromme. Oh, by the way, I have to message back and forth. I just wanted to remind you, so if you hear a little bit of, there's a little downtime while I'm doing the messages, my questions to Geromme, I apologize. But it's worth the wait, because he's great.
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about my upbringing. Like Chrissy just mentioned, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. My mom raised my brother, my sister, and I as a single parent. She did the best job she could do, which was an amazing job, actually, teaching us a lot of the principles of success, principles of, you know, what it is about you compared to someone else that makes you different. Not necessarily better, but different. And using those differences as a benefit. So I had a really great upbringing. We didn't have everything we always wanted, but we always had everything we needed. The question is, what did I learn from sometimes not having electricity or water? I learned you got to pay your bills on time, or else they'll turn it off. No, there were times growing up when we didn't have running water or electricity in the household. For whatever reason, usually my mom was late paying the bills, or didn't have the money to pay the bills. But it really taught you to be kind of resourceful. We had candles, and we did other things that allowed us to basically make it. And that actually allowed us as a family to kind of bond and sit around together and really talk about the things that were important to us. Obviously electricity and water are important, but then you learn how to talk about how your day went, or what did you learn today, and things of that nature, to really grow a bond between your siblings and obviously your parent. How has being resourceful helped me? Being resourceful is key. You know, I've been at the point in my life when I had literally nothing, and I've been at the point where I've had everything I could ever imagine. But whether I had everything or had nothing, you always have to figure out ways of being resourceful. Because, you know, resources, you know, they won't always be there. So whether you're talking about being resourceful with the time of people around you that you love and you cherish, you know, you have to be resourceful with it. You can't take it for granted. Whether it's making a lot of money playing in the NFL or whatever you do, you have to be resourceful with it. It just kind of teaches you the value of things. You know, a lot of people lose the value of a dollar when they start making a bunch of money. And that's the worst thing you can do, you know, because at the end of the day, a dollar will always be a dollar, you know, whether you have $1 or $1 million. So, you know, I think those are the fundamentals that really shape me to really have a perspective on what things really are and what they mean in the big picture of things. Actually have a funny story to tell about a time when food stamps actually fell out of my shoe. I remember my mother giving us food stamps to go actually get some groceries, but my brother and I, we could never pass up a good game of football, pickup football. So on the way to the store, we stopped and played a pickup football game with the neighborhood kids. So I actually stuffed the food stamps in my shoe and, you know, carried on playing the game with the food stamps in my shoe. And I got tackled one time and the food stamps flew everywhere. And I just remember the kids laughing at the food stamps or whatever. And I just remember feeling, you know, just the first real sense of being embarrassed about financial, you know, what I didn't have compared to what other people had. You know, that was the first time that really stood out to me that, you know, we actually weren't as financially well off as people around us. Now, at the end of the day, it wasn't a big issue, but I think that was the first time in my life that I realized that I wanted to really make sure that I never needed to have food stamps again, because I remember that feeling that I had from the kids laughing at me about it. And, you know, obviously, don't get me wrong, not that there's anything wrong with food stamps. If, you know, people need help, and obviously that is a great way the government provides help to people with food stamps. But I just remember thinking, whatever I do, you know, I just want to be successful enough to never need food stamps. It stuck with me for all these years. How do you work through being positive? Or, you know, how do you work through a situation like that? Well, you know, at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to my upbringing. You know, my mom would always say, "This too shall pass." You know, obviously meaning that this trouble won't always last, or, you know, the sun will always come up tomorrow. So no matter what, I've always been taught, no matter what you're going through today, tomorrow will be a better day. Whether you really believe it or not, it will be a better day. So, and you can apply that to any situation in your life, and I have applied that to many situations in my life, just knowing that tomorrow literally will be a better day. So no matter what situation comes up or what obstacle, just keeping that simple concept and that simple saying helps me out a lot. Well, I was actually involved in the program Big Brothers and Little Sisters since I was actually 8 years old. And I got assigned a big brother who was, I think at the time, 23. His name was Todd Freeman. And, you know, there's people that come into your life at different points in your life that affect you in different ways. You know, some people are in your life for a short period of time, some people long periods of time. But I'm very fortunate to have the guy, you know, Todd Freeman, who was my big brother since I was 8 years old, come into my life during the time that he did. I obviously didn't have a father figure growing up. I always had coaches though that stepped in and, you know, fulfilled that father role in the things that my mom couldn't really do in terms of growing into a man. But Todd was the one that was always there. He was more of a brother than a father figure. But there were times when he stepped in and was a father figure to me. You know, never missing programs, never missing sporting events, giving me advice. And to this day, we still hang out and communicate. You know, we obviously do more grown-up things now than I did when I was 8 years old, but nonetheless, we still have a great relationships. And I've seen him go through girlfriends and, Seen him get married. I was actually in his wedding. Now he has 3 beautiful daughters. And it's just funny when we sit back and just kind of reminisce on our first meetings, and when, you know, he took me to McDonald's and I thought that was the best thing in the world. Now we go to, you know, pretty nice steakhouses sometimes and just laugh about the McDonald's incident. So, but like I said, you know, people come into your lives at different stages, and I think, you know, God sent him into my life at the right time when I was 8, when I needed that brother, that other brother, because I had a great brother growing up too, but that other brother slash father figure. I definitely, I think Insightful Players is a great program, and I think there's a lot of insight and knowledge that families can learn together. You know, I think, you know, it's not just about kids learning from athletes, but I think families coming together and reading some of the testimonials of myself and some of my peers who have just as great of stories, and, you know, have done just, you know, have been just as accomplished as I have. You know, I think they can learn a lot, you know, especially as a father, you know, talking to your son and pointing out, okay, well, this guy did it, and he came from some of the backgrounds that, you know, your peers or even you may have come from. So I think it's definitely a positive tool for mentoring kids and mentoring families, and just showing them kind of behind the scenes of people they've seen on TV and they've cheered for. So I think it's a great tool for families. I had a you know, it's important that you choose good friends, I think, especially kids growing up in certain environments, because as you all know, you know, the people you hang around with sometimes can be the people who influence you the most. So I was fortunate when I was growing up. I had a really good friend named Kool-Aid. His name was Roderick Babers, but we called him Kool-Aid. But I think we held each other accountable. We held each other accountable for a lot of different things. Instead of going out doing this or doing that, we were always focused on the next thing, which was, for us at the time when we met, it was getting into high school. And not only getting into high school, but getting into high school and excelling when we got to high school. And then obviously when we were in high school, the next thing was, you know, excelling in high school. And then the next thing after that was obviously getting into a great university. So we did everything we needed to do, from academics to workouts to staying out of trouble, to accomplish all of that. So I think, you know, back to the point, friends are important. No matter what stage in life you are, whether you're an adult or whether you're a child growing up, you know, pick good friends that you can learn from and you can benefit from, and not financially benefit, but you can benefit emotionally and mentally from. Coach Malowitz, you know, once again, like I mentioned, the coaches in my life played an integral part in me, I think, shaping a lot of kind of my work, more, you know, my work ethic and kind of my attention to detail, I think. And one coach in particular, Coach Malowitz, he was a high school coach. Very hard man at when you first met him. You know, one of the type of person that you didn't really know if he liked you or not. And actually, he didn't really like most kids, to be honest with you. But you know, when you really got to know him, you realize that, you know, there was a lot going on in his mind. You know, his wife died of cancer. You know, he was left alone to raise his daughter. But somehow we ended up bonding. He ended up taking my brother and I to school some mornings because my mom worked and she couldn't do it in the school. You know, the city transportation it took us a long time to get to school. So long story short, we got to spend a lot of time bonding on those car rides. So he played an integral part, like I said, just shaping my work ethic and attention to detail, and let me actually realize that for the first time that there was something, I think, special about me compared to all the other kids and all the other athletes, in the sense of being a great athlete. You know, I never really, you know, growing up, you know, everybody you play pickup football with is good. So for the first time, you know, a coach actually sitting you down and saying, listen, Geromme, you have a chance to do what 100% of the kids you grew up with in the world want to do, which is become a professional athlete. All you have to do is stay focused and make sure you handle the little things, because your athleticism is far and beyond everybody around you. And that, for the first time, was when I realized that I actually had a chance of of going on to college and possibly doing good things in sports. You know, exactly. You know, being compassionate to people, I think, is important. You know, people come at you in a lot of different ways, you know, and people naturally are hesitant and cautious of new people around them, which they, to a certain extent, you probably should be, you know. But learning from people, you know, no matter who they are, there's always something you can learn from them. And being compassionate in the sense that I can actually learn something from this person, you know, whether they're a panhandler or a CEO of a company, there's something always to learn. There's a story always to learn. So I think being compassionate to that point is important. Otherwise, you can miss out on a good message. And you know, just going back to Coach Malowitz, yeah, he actually did make me feel special. Because like I said, I never really thought of myself as a potentially, you know, going to a top D1 school. You know, it's kind of a microcosm of kids today. Their world is so compressed, and the world is what meets the eye. They don't know that the world is so much bigger than what they see and what they hear, and you know, the world is huge, and the opportunities in the world are so huge. So when my coach sat me down for the first time, I was like, listen, you have letters from the University of Miami to Harvard and anything in between. These schools are recruiting you. I was like, really? Wow. So yeah, I mean, that was the first time I was like, wow, well, let me definitely stay focused. So yeah, I mean, that just goes into perseverance and staying resilient. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, you know, it wasn't a cakewalk. You know, there's always ups and downs in life. You know, they call it obviously the ebb and flows of life. You know, there's going to be high times and low times. But I learned from a young age that the low times don't last long. You know, they may be vicious and they may take a lot out of you, but they're not going to be here forever. And the same for the high times. You know, not saying that high times won't be here forever, but that just allows you to appreciate the high times more, especially after you've gone through such tough low times. And for me to get from where I started in life to where I am now, you know, there was a lot of resilience and a lot of me just saying, you know, like I said earlier, this day won't last, you know, trouble won't last always. So, you know, if I can do the things that I know that are right and do the things that I know that will get me to the next day and to the next level of success, no matter how hard and how draining and how difficult and daunting the task may be, I know that I'll be better off in the end. You know, I just think, you know, in terms of the kids today growing up, you know, there's so many external pressures, and there's always been external pressures, but I think nowadays in the age of social media and things like that, there's so many more distractions away from what's important, you know, like, and I mean, that fact hadn't changed ever, but I just think there's so many more distractions that kids can be sidetracked by. But I think staying focused and staying true to yourself and not what people want you to be or what you think people want you to be is extremely important. You know, and I guess just staying positive. You know, like I said, you know, if you're not positive, then life is just so much harder. You know, I mean, there's always a sign hanging up in the weight room that said, you know, your attitude is 90% of the battle, you know, no matter what you're doing. So if you don't approach every task with a positive attitude, then you basically lost before you even begin. So, you know, if you can just believe that and understand that your attitude towards any situation is 90% of the battle, and if you have a positive attitude, then you're 90% accomplished in accomplishing that task or whatever, then I think, you know, you're well on your way, or at least 90% of the way to accomplishing it. You know, and I guess that kind of fits in with me going to Notre Dame. You know, I accepted a scholarship to University of Notre Dame, and I just remember for the first time that was the first time I was on my own. You know, like, and I knew that I couldn't afford to fly back home like a lot of the other kids did. So, I mean, I knew I'd only see my mom and my family maybe once, maybe twice a year. But, you know, it's funny, like, that didn't necessarily bother me too much, you know. But it really hit me when I was walking away from my mom at the gate at the airport. You know, back then, you know, everybody can go through security and see your way at the airport. And I just remember crying for the first time in a long time, because I knew that was a changing point in my life, in the relationship between me and my mom, and and I guess just the changing point in a man's life, where he goes from a boy to becoming a man, because I knew Notre Dame was going to be the changing point in my life that took me from an 18-year-old kid to a man, and having to learn things that my mom couldn't teach me anymore, that I would have to basically use everything that I learned in life to make sure that I made the right decisions. I knew that at that moment, that was when that happened. You know, you always wonder when you're a kid when you're going to become a man, or when you're going to be forced to have to become a man. And at that moment at the gate, when I was leaving my mom, and I knew that was it, I was a college student now, and I was on my own, I knew that was that time in my life. And I think that was important for me. And you know, it obviously allowed me to basically look at college in a new perspective, and actually take advantage of it, and actually grow and learn. And I guess the culture at Notre Dame was weird. You know, me being a Texas kid, going to Notre Dame, adjusting to the cold weather, the people. You know, actually, I didn't really have to adjust to the people. It was kind of funny. I felt the people had a harder time adjusting to me, you know, because fortunately I went to a high school and grew up in an environment where, you know, my high school was a mixed high school. We had blacks, whites, Hispanics, everything you can imagine. So it was nothing for me to go hang out with this racial group or that racial group, and it doesn't really affect me. I mean, we're all people. But it was funny at Notre Dame. It was you get a lot of how can I say, people who haven't really been exposed to culture, which, you know, it is what it is. So them having to be my roommate and live with me in a dorm, it was never a negative thing. It was just actually pretty comical at times when, you know, people would ask me questions that they would assume that I would know the answer to, because I was a black kid from the South, you know. But, you know, it was all fun, though, looking back on it. You know, but at the end of the day, like I said, you know, I didn't have to adjust to that culture. That culture literally had to adjust to me, which was a fun time, though, because we all learned from one another, especially my roommate. My roommate actually had never talked to a black lady before until he talked to my mom. So it was just funny kind of hearing his impressions of how he thought black women were in real life compared to how they really were. And times when my uncles would call and my roommates would pick up the phone and they couldn't understand what my uncles were saying because of the Texas accent, and just kind of the I don't even want to call it ebonics, because it wasn't even ebonics. It was just a different way of putting things or phrasing things. And just hearing my roommates just say, I think it's your uncle and I think he wants to talk to you. So it was just funny. It was all great, though. I had a great time. You know, I think as a culture and as humans, I don't think it's a cultural thing. I think it's as humans, we all assume different things, and we assume different things about different people, and specifically different races too. But I think it takes a big person to put assumptions aside and look at somebody for who they are. You know, naturally we will assume different things. You know, that doesn't make you this or that doesn't make you that. That just makes you human, I think. But it takes a better person or a bigger person or a more mature person to set assumptions aside and really get to know somebody for who they really are. Because, you know, you learn a lot, and you learn a lot from somebody if you just talk to them sometimes. You know, the guy may have dreadlocks, but that doesn't mean he's this or he's that. So I think that takes a mature person to do that. And, you know, it's weird, you know, going into the NFL was a fun time for me, you know. And I think that, like I said, just with every step in life, you take what you learned earlier in life and apply it, you know, and it helps you. It should be able to help you. So not assuming a lot of different things about people and just kind of taking it as it came, I think that really helped me a lot in the NFL, you know, because there's a lot of parts to the NFL, whether you're speaking of the business part, whether you're speaking about the competition part, or the partying part, you know. And there's a lot of different people and characters that you meet within all of those facets of the NFL. So just kind of taking people for who they are, and just enjoying it, as it came. You know, I think that helped me a lot. You know, I guess the question is, am I curious as to how or why I'm so accepting? I guess not really, you know, because I guess I grew up around so many characters of poor, you know, being poor, people around me who were addicts, you know, you name it, I've been around it. So, and I'm not even saying I can relate to it, but I know there's always another story that, you know, things are not always what they seem, basically. So, you know, with addicts, you know, just because it's almost like you can't really blame people for being addicts sometimes, because you don't know what happened in their life to draw them to being an addict. But you can blame them for staying addicted to something when it's hurting them. So I'm not necessarily always accepting of things. It's just I understand that there's always another story to it, another side of the story. And if you can just get to know somebody enough to learn that other side of the story, then I think that not only helps you, but it helps them. You know, because sometimes these people, they have nobody else. I mean, nobody really understands them, you know. So if you can just take a moment to let them know, well, you know, well, I know you look a certain way, or, you know, your past will say you will be a certain way, but there's something different about you, and I can see that. You know, like I said, you may not accept everything about him, but at least you understand to a certain degree. The question is, how did my siblings and I escape kind of the world around you? I mean, it's easy. I mean, I guess it's not so easy, but it's just decisions. You know, if you learn consequences to things from an early age, I think that helps you out a lot. My mom always taught us consequences. If you don't do this, and I tell you to do this, you'll either get a spanking or you'll be punished. But as you get older, the consequences go well beyond me, mom. The consequences go into, okay, you'll be in jail or you'll be dead. So keeping all that in mind, you know, no matter what came in front of me when I was an adolescent or whatever, I just remember there's consequences. And, you know, I'm not saying I never did anything wrong, but I can tell you, if I did something wrong, I knew the consequences of what would happen if I got caught doing something wrong. But more times than not, I always stayed on the straight and narrow, if you will, because I knew that there were consequences to not doing that, you know. Whether the consequence was having to miss a game because I was academically ineligible, or more drastic, if I do this, I can go to jail, you know. Or if I roll with this group, I could go to jail because I'm not really sure what they're up to. So I think the problem with a lot of kids today is they don't have any sense of consequence. They may know right from wrong, but they don't have a sense of consequence for doing right or doing wrong. So I think that's at the heart of kind of doing what you need to do. You know, I guess in terms of consequences, you know, like I said, that is the root of kind of keeping you on the straight and narrow. If you understand the consequence of doing things, and you know, like I said, growing up, my mom was it was almost like she was a prophet. You know, when we were younger, she fed it to us as we could understand it. If you don't do this, then I'm going to do this to make sure you do that next time. But like I said, as we got older, she made it clear to us that, you know, quote unquote, mama can't help you get out of certain situations the older you get. So you need to know what's right and wrong, and you need to realize the consequences of doing right and wrong. So, and there are some consequences that are really big, whether it be death or jail or STDs, you know, you name it, you know, she mentioned it to us. So, you know, I think she was very real and honest with us. You know, I mean, I know my mom, she realized that, you know, there was a reality and there was there was an ideal world and there was a reality world. And she never sugarcoated the two of them. You know, ideally you do this, but in reality you're probably going to do this. So know the consequences of if you do that, you know. So I think that that helped a lot. And I think too, you know, just presenting people with options in life. One of the biggest challenges of kids today is they feel they don't have many options, whether that be because my mom, my dad, my uncles, my brothers, they didn't go to college or they're not doing anything with their life. So what makes you think I have the option to do something with my life, But if you let kids know that you have any option that you want, you just have to work hard for it and not get sidetracked by doing dumb stuff. And that goes back into knowing the consequences of what you're doing, because everybody knows right from wrong. I think that's huge. Just giving kids options that really create a vision for them to really see what the future can be. The future doesn't have to be what's in front of me every day. The future can be, anything. Anything you want if you work hard enough for it. And I played with a lot of people who came from a lot worse situations than me, and yet they made it. So I know that it can be done. I did it, and like I just mentioned, a lot of people that I know have done it. So just instilling that in kids and allowing them to see a bigger picture and a bigger vision is important. When I was at Notre Dame, I was a finance major, but I always realized that I wanted to do something business related. I want to own my own corporation, not just a business, a corporation. And in my mind, the difference was a corporation was big, and it's big. It's big time. So I did a lot of things to realize that dream, taking certain classes. Obviously, like I said, I graduated in finance, but when I was actually in the NFL, I went to Harvard Business School for an executive education course, specifically on business management and entrepreneurial studies. So after that class, a few of my teammates and the old Notre Dame teammates started an athletic apparel company. That company is actually outfitting a few Navy SEALs to train in right now, so that's going well. But I've also, in the meantime, started a web-based business that's actually launching next March, where we figured out a way to place a value on every individual social network and reward them for their ability to influence their peers via their social networks, but on behalf of brands who are advertising. So I think that's going to be really cool. It really mixes the idea of allowing people to be rewarded for who they are, their likeness. If I know somebody and I can recommend something to them, and I do recommend something to them, I can get rewarded for it now. People are doing this every day through social media. We just created a platform that where we can mix brand businesses and these influential people, and the businesses will reward them for it. So that's going to be actually really cool. It's going to be called Branzo.com, and that'll be, like I said, we'll launch in March of 2012. The inspiration for my web-based business actually came, it's funny, you kind of laugh at things that happened to you or didn't happen to you in your life. And I was sitting around one night thinking about how when I was a professional athlete, which was a few years ago, I used to get a lot of free stuff. And I was just kind of thinking in my head, I wish I still got a lot of free stuff like I used to get. Then I was thinking, well, brands and companies used to give me free stuff based off my ability to influence a potential target consumer of theirs. And I was thinking I wasn't even like a Peyton Manning type athlete in terms of my name value, but yet brands still gave me free stuff just for my ability to influence. So I was like, well, everybody who has a social network, via Twitter, Facebook, they can influence their peers. If you send a recommendation, most of the time their peers will check it out. So I was like, well, why don't I build a platform that allows that, and that's what I did. So that's where the inspiration came from. Just to reiterate one of the points I made in terms of resilience and perseverance. Like I said, there's always going to be bad things that happen to us. I remember in the game, before we used to go out and play football games, we used to talk about there's going to be good things and bad things that happen to us during this game. If you're a quarterback, you may throw 2 interceptions, but you may throw 2 touchdowns as well. But it's how you respond to those 2 interceptions that will dictate how well you do the rest of the game. And the people in life and in sports that can recover from the bad things that happen to them the quickest are the ones who are usually the most successful. So just keep that in mind. There's always going to be good things and always bad things that happen, but it's how you respond and how quickly you can respond from the bad things that happen to you is what usually makes you more successful in life and can appreciate the better things that are happening as well. So I guess I'll just leave you with that.
All right. Well, I want to thank Geromme. My goodness, he's filled with wisdom. He's just incredible. When I first met him, I think my jaw dropped several times. I mean, that message that he just left us with was pretty incredible. I invite you to look at his story on insightfulplayer.com and to learn more about Geromme. He's an exceptional role model, doing some great things in the world. And, you know, this whole resilience, consequences, and perseverance, he's just so good at it. His attitude is so amazing that he has such a large perspective, which really gives him the ability to just go further in life. So I hope you really enjoyed him. I want you to know we're going to have him back really soon when we don't have that technical challenge, so we can interact and you can interact with him. He's a wonderful, very compelling man. So I want to thank you for tuning in and putting up with this technical snafu tonight, but I hope you could hear clearly his beautiful message. And next week we're going to have on Ben Utek. Ben Utek is filled with grit and grace. He is a former NFL player for the Bengals and the Colts, and he's also a professional singer. And hopefully he can sing a few bars for us. He has a beautiful voice. He's very talented, and he too has some great stories to tell. But I want to thank Geromme Sapp. He's an incredible role model, and we will have him back on soon. So thank you all very much for tuning in, and we will see you next Tuesday. Good night.